Volodymyr Zelensky engaged in some deep discussions. A little later, Donald Trump was having a bilateral with the Emir of Qatar, and just before he talked to the press, and he said that his meeting with Zelensky had been a very good one. He said that he hoped to meet him again, and he also said that Russia should really make moves to try and end the war. So certainly Zelensky might be taking that as some positive signs from the US president when it comes to Ukraine. We also know that G7 leaders have pledged more sanctions on Russia, energy sanctions this time. They want to keep the pressure up on Moscow in order to try and bring it to the negotiating table.
Natasha Butler reporting again from Evian, where the G7 summit is happening. Thank you very much, Natasha. We're joined now by John Curtin, the founder and executive director of the G7 Research Group. And John, you're live from Publier in France, which is right by where the summit is taking place and the heads of state are meeting. So we're going to leave all the Iran topics aside because we've dealt with that already. So Iran notwithstanding, what are you watching at this G7? And I'll preface the question by saying just this, that some G7 meetings, not much comes out of them. And then some can be quite momentous, but they tend to be rarer.
Oh, well, you're right. The G7 summit got off to a very strong start with the opening dinner last evening. G7 leaders alone were the center of the discussion. The decisions reached there were on the war in Iran, specifically the ceasefire, which Donald Trump had just produced with the Iranian counterparts. And that has now lasted about 3 days. So it's real. And then the next step, ensuring that all of the other G7 members beyond the United States would actually put their military ships where their mouth is into the Strait of Hormuz to ensure that the traffic would resume. The ships would flow freely with their cargoes, their precious cargoes of oil, gas, fertilizers, and food too. So with that under control and a big success to start, they turned this morning, to the G7 leaders meeting alone with Zelensky to deal with the other war, that in Ukraine. And there it was another success from all we've seen and heard so far. Zelensky only recently confirmed his attendance at the G7 summit, and he wouldn't have done it unless he was convinced that the G7 leaders, all of them, including Donald Trump, would do a lot for Ukraine. And indeed, that's what's happening.
Why do you call this a success? Why are you calling this a success so far as regards Ukraine, Russia?
That's the question.
Sorry, John. I think there's a small delay. I was just asking you, why are you calling this G7 a success so far on Russia, Ukraine?
Because Zelensky came. He had a very good meeting alone with just the G7 leaders. And from that, as we've seen, there were more expressions of tangible sanctions against Russia and financial and other support for Ukraine, not only by the Canadian Prime